I know, it makes me want
Good afternoon and welcome to the Cameron Art Museum. My name is Krueger and I'm the Director of Lifelong Learning here at CAM. And it is so exciting to welcome all of you here to the event this afternoon. Thank you, as always, for helping to make CAM your cultural gathering place and for finding all of the various perspectives that come through here, through learning, through history, through art. Thank you all for your membership and also for your ongoing support of the museum. Without your support, we couldn't do the work that we do here at CAM. So thank you first and foremost for being here. And then also I'll take this brief moment to remind everyone to silence your devices. As we go forward, we'll have a wonderful film and conversation. And we want to respect them when we get started. So first, I'd like to also thank our partner in this screening, the Carolina Beach Centennial organizers. They've been hard at work for the past few years, and knowing our unique connection to the land and African American history in our region, they reached out with this opportunity to gather for this screening here at the Cameron Art Museum. So first, please allow me to introduce Maureen Ferguson Lewis, who is the Carolina Beach Centennial Chairman.
I want to thank you all for joining us today and celebrating our 100th birthday. And Carolina Beach would not be what it is without the Seabreeze history, family, and culture. Here's a quick raise of hands. We have several Centennial Committee members in the audience. If you'll raise your hand. There we are. Miss Elaine Henson was the person who brought this film to my attention, and we discussed having it as part of our entire program. And I initially thought we would do it in Carolina Beach, but then we realized that we wanted to share this with the bigger New Hanover County community, and what better place to do that but in the Cameron Art Museum. So thank you to September and the entire staff for allowing us to show this monumental documentary here. I also want to thank Rhonda Bellamy, who's been a partner in crime for many things that I've been involved in, but especially giving her time today. And both she and John Davis produced a really interesting, important piece of work that, you know, when we started the Centennial Committee, our purpose was to celebrate the past and look towards the future. And this piece, this documentary does that. And we want to thank the panelists who are going to speak with Rhonda and talk about life in Seabreeze and the impact, the prior impact and the future of that community. So that's all I have to say. So I hope you enjoy the film, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. And I have the pleasure of introducing someone who we all know and love, Rhonda Bellamy. I don't know about how many of you are transplants to the region. I involved in the arts for probably about 5 minutes into town, and you hear the name Rhonda Bellamy. She is essential for what has made this region to be a thriving center in the arts. And her love and tireless work for arts in our region is something that is critical for the kind of film that we are going to be able to see today. She is the president and CEO of our Arts Council here in Wilmington, and she's been a driving force here since 2012. Under her leadership, the Arts Council has become the nucleus of Wilmington's thriving creative sector, championing the arts organizations, and cultural initiatives. Some of you were perhaps downtown last night at Make Music Day, right? And you had this wonderful opportunity to hear music outdoors in downtown Wilmington with some of our fabulous local musicians. That's the kind of work that she continues to do. She is also the past chair of Arts North Carolina, the state's leading arts advocacy organization dedicated to ensuring equity, access, and connectivity across North Carolina's arts landscape. Before all of this, Rhonda built her career as a news director, anchor, and talk show host with over 25 years in radio, television, and print journalism in the Wilmington market. And you probably hear her regularly on WHQR with Around Town with Rhonda Bellamy. If you don't know about it already, listen for it. That's where you can hear some of the great opportunities that we have going on in our area. Please help me welcome Rhonda Bellamy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for that very generous introduction, September. I really appreciate it. If anyone had told me that a hastily arranged project for the aquarium would have legs 10 years later, I would not have believed you. The aquarium had received a grant, and they were supposed to have students conduct oral histories of people, African Americans in particular, and their connection to the water here in Hanover County. That project never materialized, and I was summoned at the 11th hour to create a documentary. And so with just about 24 hours, I called Bill Freeman, and I said, Bill, can you gather a group, and let's meet so that I can knock it out in one fell swoop? And he did. And Barbara and Clyde Jenkins allowed us to use their home. John Davis came along to provide some of the images that you will see here. And it's not really a documentary. I laugh when people call it a documentary. To me, it is the chronicle of history. It is my voice over still photography. Other photographs, the archival photographs, were provided by Cape Fear Museum. I was very honored to be asked to officiate over the unveiling of the Seabreeze marker recently, or last year I should say, and I'm doubly honored that you're here to share in this rich cultural exploration of African Americans and their connection to the waterways here in Hanover County. Enjoy a sense of place. Right, so I'm going to ask Elise Freeman Muhammad to join me, as well as Bill, and is Yuri going to come up as well? 3 generations of Freemans. So you see why I chuckle when I hear the word documentary. Certainly, it looks a lot different on my laptop than it does on a big screen. But I'm happy to have chronicled that moment in time because at least I know 3 people are no longer with us, right? Right. So I'm going to start with you, Bill. Did you, growing up on Seabreeze, ever have a sense of its relevance to the community, to New Hanover County?
What?
Relevance,
No,
speaking to the.
they're not. We just were there to have fun. We laugh and craft, and we never thought about what it was gonna be like 40 years from now, from then.
Do you still live on Seabreeze?
Yes.
And one of the things that has come up is the fact that so much of the property is no longer in the Freeman family.
Yes.
You have an estimation of how much land is still owned by the Freeman family?
Maybe 10%.
Of the 2,500 acres at its height?
It's probably less than that, owned by the Freemans, but there are other families who are, Seabreeze families and staples who've been there for many, many years who own some land. But surely, when you talk about 3,000 acres, when you're saying 300 acres still being owned by us, no, absolutely not.
Okay. Now, you are regarded as the family historian now. You used to have, you still doing your fireside chats?
No, we haven't done fireside chats lately. I've been trying to focus on, not as such that we were doing coming together, but more so just interviews with different people and trying to pull together the information. Because we found it, the more that we looked up, the more we found out. And because I'm a little bit crazy about it, I tend to go deeper and deeper into it. So right now, I'm trying to pull it together more so because I can stay for ages talking to people and getting information. You're never going to learn everything there is to learn about Seabreeze, but it's so fascinating. So I've kind of stopped that part so that I can really pull together something more like what you've done and, books and things like that.
You grew up on Seabreeze.
Yes.
And I saw the look of familiarity with you all when you took the picture, and I had a hard time calming you all down at the unveiling. Because it's like a big family reunion every time y'all get together. Do y'all get together often?
Not as often as we used to. But it's so weird because even though we don't get together, it's such a strong sense of family that it's like you never lose that space where your family and your Seabreeze history is. Of course, we don't need to take that for granted, and we've learned not to do that. So that's why we are, kind of trying to make sure that we can keep some of this stuff together. And so, yes, we moved back home to Dad's home in Seabreeze. I think I was 10 years old. And it was such a change. I lived in Wilmington, I grew up the first 10 years in Wilmington. And so when you move back down to Seabreeze, okay, everybody here knows how cliquish we are at Seabreeze. So I did get A's the first year. But growing up at Seabreeze was phenomenal. It was walking over to somebody's house, always the doors open, fish fries in the community. Oh gosh, the heritage days, but beyond the heritage days and the things that were more formalized, it was really the baseball games, going to Seabreeze after church, and those sorts of things. It was extremely a safe feeling.
What was the most surprising thing about the Seabreeze history that you discovered?
I don't know that I can think of the most surprising thing, but one thing I would like to know is when we talk about Seabreeze proper, we're talking about that little cut, Seabreeze North and Seabreeze South, But I think what I've noticed more lately is the fact that snow's cut through, from the sound to the river. So that means that all of that area that we kind of differentiate in our heads as being Carolina Beach and Seabreeze really all of that land was one piece of land, you know, and the magnitude of what Alexander Freeman owned, because when we look back in the records beyond Alexander, we know that his father was, we learned later that his father was Abraham, his father was John Freeman, who was a Native American. And so it looks like all of that land are parts of the reservations that were so-called granted to not only the Freemans, but other Native families. So this huge swath of land that belonged to not only Alexander Freeman, but, you know, other blacks in the area. And so, like, for instance, I'll say one thing and then kind of let that go. For instance, we find in 1902 a building on the beach called Seabreeze. So, you know, we talked about people trying to figure out when was the first time that you saw the word Seabreeze associated with a building. We usually went to like 1920. But we have found now articles talking about Seabreeze Pavilion in 1902. Also, Archie Freeman had a restaurant in the 1890s, you know, so it kind of goes a lot, you know, it's a lot to Seabreeze. And it's the little area, of course, but it's the community, it's the larger community, it's the crab house, it's the 5 churches, you know, it's the fact that Seabreeze had a Masonic lodge, you know, all of this is the more you go, the more you can find.
I'm sure. And Elisa's daughter, Nuri, is also a documentarian, and you're looking to do more on Seabreeze.
Yes, ma'am. I am in the production stage of my documentary called Seabreeze: A Legacy, a feature film planning to come out next summer. So,
Now, Bill, you talked about the inlet separating Seabreeze from the beach. You talk about that in the documentary. You also talk about your practice of letting the grounds rest. Not shrimping on Sundays, for example. And you say that you follow Native Americans in that practice of doing that. Were you aware of your Native American history at that time?
Well, I kind of heard it, you know, because the old people, a lot of them said they were Indians, and some of them said they were mulattoes, and so I was somewhat aware of that, but not really. We just looked at them as people. You know, we never thought what they were as people.
Were you in the area when Hazel came through?
Yes. Yes. I was there, and I was also there when they ended, you know, when they called winter, old man called winter, dynamited the rest of the inlet, opened it, and the fish, crabs, and shrimp, everything, water went up 100, maybe 200 feet in the air. It was, and then the water rushed through like a hurricane almost. And his son was on the boat, and he fell overboard. Skippy Brothers, he lived down in North Carolina Beach. I know you guys probably know him. 97 years old.
Wow. We'll take a few questions from the audience. Anybody have any questions they'd like to answer the previous? Yes, Simone.
You said something blew up. Can you explain what you're talking about? What blew up?
Yes.
The explosion.
Yes. What about it?
You want to blow out the whole house?
What actually blew up?
Oh, well, no, it was just sand, it was land. And there was, you know, just like the beaches. And, but they wanted the commercial fishermen wanted a way to get from the sound to the ocean. And they got with the Corps of Engineers and they decided to blow it, to open it in enough, and they made up there. And the last few feet of it, I guess maybe about as far as against the wall, called winter, old man called winter, dynamite. And like I said, fish, crabs, shrimp, water, everything. He goes over there with a duck, or the activities duck, the army, and his son was on the back of it, he fell in the water. No, that's not Slow Study is where the really is. That's Slow Study.
And so where is this area as it relates to the bridge and snow slide? That was 90.
Oh, the inlet was dilated about probably 800 or 900 feet north of Seabreeze. Between that and Rifle Beach.
Yes, ma'am.
So after the opening up that inlet, changed your lives in Seabreeze.
Well, we weren't aware of it at the time, but it really caused, as far as our land, it ate away a lot of our beach land. Opening the inlet had the good side and the bad side. The good side was the commercial business. It could, take parties out, but the bad side was that it eroded the beach. So we had 72 acres. We reached up with
There was some talk, actually there was a lawsuit about that, the land that was lost, and it would lose a few hundred feet per year, because of it. And also, it was thought to be, a part of the change that she was talking about in the, the marine life in the area, which of course affected the fishing, which of course affected the families.
Thank you.
Yes.
Did that have anything to do with when they were opening up the river now with the losing the rice plantations? Because the rice plantations use fresh water, but when they opened up the river, it was the salt water that killed all the rice plantations. Rice is not able to survive without water. Did any of that happen did any of that cause them that to happen? Was that one of the repercussions of it?
I don't know, it probably would be, but I haven't read anything that directly links that, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Because it certainly changed all of the ecology. I wasn't thinking about that. Thank you.
Very, very interesting. Yes.
I was wondering what efforts are being made to preserve the legacy of Seabreeze now with the museum or the frontage. Are there any efforts? I have a sign I wrote about the historic marker, but we know there's a lot of changes coming to that area. And visually, it's sad to see buildings, remaining buildings burned down recently. And is there anything being done to try to preserve visually the legacy of Seabreeze?
One of the things we're trying to do is establish a museum there. We have an old house there that run around whose Freeman's son had, I think it came from Roland. And I'm trying to restore that building and make it into a museum so we can exhibit some of the things we have. Like I have old grandfather, there's an old motor, motor with a gas can right on the top of the motor and all that stuff. So we're trying to do that, but we're running out of money.
With that, make it, you made it a historical site, but that stopped some of the, I'm not going to use the term, stopped some of the land being sold. I took my daughter through that area, and I was very sad when I drove through. I didn't see any of the family houses. So I'm thinking if you can make that a historical site, then that land will be preserved, and it cannot be purchased. So that's my thinking.
There are so many things that can be done, it really is. And even if you take what you have and kind of go forth with it, there's a lot that can be done. And which is why this is important, what we're doing, the documentary that Mary is working on, We have a lot of history that we have pulled together, but we also know that family members have a lot of history in your homes. And so one thing we would ask is that you start, keeping that stuff and, not letting it get thrown away and marking some of your pictures and things that you don't think are important or something that somebody else needs to see to link their family, to Seabreeze or to, just to say that was grandma. And I know that when we were watching the film, it's very emotional. It's very emotional for us. And we're looking at it and we're seeing people that we've lost and knowing the impact that they had on our families and the area. So all of these things are things that we definitely need to take into consideration.
Yeah, I thought I met you yesterday with Miss Stella.
Yeah.
And I'm a Freeman from Charleston, South Carolina. I did not know anything about the Freemans here, so when I was here visiting, Miss Stella mentioned it, so I came. But the long story short, what we're doing, and what I'm doing actually, is because we have a challenge with a lot, I'm from the Johns Island part, and what we're having is a lot of challenges with a lot of developers coming there. And so what I've done, I'm developing a conservation easement, and that's really helping, because what we're doing is changing that property that I had that was deeded to me from my ancestors. We had owned that property about 150 years, so it's a long history and a legacy. So what we're doing is teaming up with the conservation group and to conserve that area and changing it to a habitat. It's a biodiversity and coastal habitat, and I'm very, very excited about that. So that's something to think about, and that y'all want more information about how I'm doing it is great. The other piece of it, I'm developing a 501 wing to it, and with a nonprofit, you can also generate a lot of donations and monies for that too. So it's providential that I was here doing Juneteenth, met you, and had that dialogue with Stella.
Just a little clarity, when you think about doing the day of segregation, you had all these black beaches, Jacksonville, Atlantic Beach, several beaches that blacks could go to. And the question I have is, the Freeman Beach, that was a Freeman Beach for blacks. Is that, am I understanding this right? The Freeman Beach for blacks in this area. This is where we would go to be able to get to the beach. And I'm understanding that probably about 2,500 acres. Am I not understanding?
Well, the Freeman Beach, okay, so the 2,500 acres was not just on Freeman Beach. It wasn't just on Freeman Beach.
Okay.
So it could have all the way from possibly, near Murder Grove coming on forward back on what they call Federal Point. So, it wasn't that 2,500, it wasn't just that, sir. I don't know that. 72, well, I know that the part that you all were talking about was 72 acres, but I know at one time it was about 100 acres. But by the time you all started doing the litigation, it was like 72 acres.
And right now, the family owns about how much of this 2,500 acres?
No, sir, right now the family owns none of Freeman Beach proper.
So the Freeman Park is owned by the state or something?
The part that we had right there is owned by, from what I understand, what is called Freeman Beach Corporation? Freeman Beach LLC, which is not us. No, it's a corporation that was formed to get land, and they did that. So the Freemans, we don't own any of the beach anymore.
Was that during the time that there was all that litigation about the beach, in terms of losing the beach and how the beach was trying to be taken over? And so that's what happened, and you all lost that lawsuit. And so that's how you lost all the land. Because that's what Mr. Frank Hill and all of those were there fighting that, and so that's how it was lost.
Well, it's part of how it was lost, that's not the only thing. I mean, there was a lot of land, more than what we call Freeman Beach, that was owned by a lot of, several black families in Federal Point. One of the things that I saw when doing the research is during the time of the heavy Jim Crow era, the people who owned land on what we call Carolina Beach now, I'm saying the part across the bridge, were not allowed to go to the land. And when I say not allowed, I mean you go over there and you get harassed and all of these things happen. So that really devalues that land in these people's mind, because then it becomes, am I going to sell this land? Well, part of people selling land is they need money, right? Or they're pressured into it, okay? And some of that pressure was a result of the policies that were on the beach at the time, that blacks couldn't own, couldn't buy, or even transfer land between blacks. So, or even go over there. And unfortunately, we know that we saw some of that racist mentality continue right into the time when I was here. There were times we didn't go down to Carolina Beach after dark. I mean, I'm just saying. So this kind of thing really adds to where it impacts the value of the land of the people at the time. So when somebody comes and says, well, I need to buy some land, whatever, you're like, okay, well, I have a lot, and, Dad has said many times to me that sometimes we took, the land that we had for granted because it was so much, and he's told me stories where he would say, well, Granddaddy Roscoe would say, well, so-and-so got married, just go over there, set your house up, giving, out land to some of the churches and allowing the churches to build. Because we didn't think about land in that way as something to hold on to and hoard and not let other people get to. This was not a concept of, naming people. And so that kind of still translated. So it really is sad now when we go down to Seabreeze and we see that there's just a little piece of property that we can access the beach by.
But don't negate racism, Jim Crow, and what happened in 1890, whatever.
Absolutely, 1898.
Let's call it like it is. Don't blame yourself. Don't be apologetic. We're talking about racism, and we're talking about people who love land near the water. We're talking about the hurricane. We're talking about what actually happened during that era. So, come on, let's call it like it is.
Well, it is absolutely.
What's racism?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely, racism. Absolutely.
Which brings up another point to me, and that is that in addition to Hurricane Hazel and fractionalized property, the effect of integration on the popularity of places like Seabreeze. Can you address that, Bill?
Yes, well, when I was a boy, Fort Fisher Air Force Base had a bunch of airmen, and we could not eat on Carolina Beach. The airmen from Fort Fisher could not eat there, so I think,
The black airman.
yes, she had, the place that I owned before, Blackberry Green Market, she made that into a restaurant, and she served the black airmen from Fort Fisher, because they could not eat on Carolina Beach. That's true.
That is true. I am from the Fort Fisher. My dad brought me home here and we got married. I stayed in Fort Fisher, moved towards Wilmington, so I stayed at Seabreeze. And then more towards Wilmington, where my dad had finally got us a place, and we were partners. We stayed at Fort Fisher and Seabreeze for about 6 years. He is Major Sergeant Charles Colson, and he knows Bruce, and he used to be around Annette and Michael. He hung with Bruce's kids.
One of them is here. Where's Brenda?
Right here.
So a lot of times when I would go up there, when we would still come back from basketball and come down to the beach and spend like the weekends. But when he was at Fort Fisher, we were at the pier. I know me and my mom and him for every Friday and Saturday. We were every week.
Are you still in the area?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
All right. One second. Just so everyone can hear some of the questions, I'll roll with the mic.
Hello. Rhonda Bellamy.
Okay.
I'd like some clarification about Box City. Remember, the Hills were supposed to be the owner of Box City. So could you explain what happened to that? I've asked my question. We went to Box City and had a wonderful time there, and of course, we crossed from Seabreeze to get to Box City, either in a boat or we would drive, have to take that long drive through Carolina Beach. But then as the years passed, we found out that they were trying to take it away from us. And I found out that Mr. Hill owned that. Could you explain what happened with that?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Hill, Uncle Frank Hill, was married to Lula Freeman.
Yeah.
So they were the two, that put Box City at Freeman Beach. Does that answer you? When you asked about the Hill being owned by the Hill, Mr. Hill, he was married to Lula.
And I know his daughter was fighting for it.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct. His daughter, Evelyn was, she had a lawsuit here in Hanover County, trying to fight all of the things that were happening with the land laws. So she did that for many years, yes, ma'am.
Was she successful?
No, ma'am.
And if you have any questions about Seabreeze in particular, Brenda Freeman worked in her landowners out there. So she knows more about what actually went on in Seabreeze than I do.
I have a question for the filmmaker. Can you tell us a little more about your film, where it was filmed, and where you might premiere it locally?
It will definitely be locally, maybe even here possibly it's a possible location. Most of my filming is going to take place here in North Carolina. I also do want to film some in South Carolina as well. It's really just going to go over the prime business owners of Seabreeze from back then, the golden age of Seabreeze, and just hit each year up until about the 1980s.
Yes.
My understanding was after Hurricane Hazel, part of the reason Seabreeze did not rebuild successfully was because one of the issues that hurricane was. My understanding was after Hurricane Hazel, Seabreeze was not able to be rebuilt by the landowners because mortgages and lending was not available at that time. That's 1954. Is that part of the history you're discovering?
1954, Seabreeze.
It was.
Yes, that is, it was definitely much more of a struggle for those who didn't have insurance, on the buildings to rebuild.
Right. Insurance.
That's absolutely a part of it.
Because
That's
that
not
seems
all of
what
it.
really, that seems to be the crushing blow to the inability to rebuild from that.
Hurricane Hazel definitely, you gotta remember all of that stuff kind of happened all at the same time. You had the policies, you had 1954, the hurricane, and you also had immigration. All of these things just worked together. So it definitely was several things.
Well, I got a little story. I'm definitely part of the Seabreeze family, but one of my fondest memories was meeting Uncle Frank when I was about 10 years old. My daddy, everybody knows him, Smiley, our Davis. My daddy New Jersey, used to take me on the beach, way back in the day. And I was about 10 years old. Uncle Frank was like in his 80s. And I was fascinated with this man. He had all these album books, which had all the pictures of Bob City, stuff like that. And I was just looking. And he was like, "You really like this stuff, young man?" I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "I just love it." So he told me the story. He told me how it cost him like $10,000 to run the surveys and stuff. And he said he actually owned, like, I say about 2 blocks further up Canal Drive. He said, but they fought him and took the land up to where it is now, where the ticket booth is. He said, but they can't take it no more. But it was fascinating watching him on the beach because he would tell the police, "Hey, get the people off the sand dunes and stuff like that." He sat on the beach all day long in his 80s with his cooler and his umbrella. And like I said, I wasn't about 10 years old. And he said, "You come back and see me, boy." I said, "Yes, sir, yes, sir."
My name is Brenda Freeman, and I'm the daughter. I'm the oldest daughter of Bruce Freeman, who is now deceased. And to answer your question, ma'am, after Hurricane Hazel, they did rebuild Seabreeze. Miss Sadie's building was built, Bruce's was built, Mr. Davis was rebuilt. It was a lot of buildings that had been destroyed by the hurricane. I was 6 years old at that time, which was 70. I'm 76 now, so I remember all of this. I do remember it, yes. And so they did rebuild Seabreeze. That was one of the things that my father said that we are going to rebuild. And they did, because that hurricane destroyed the whole beach, Seabreeze. So, were you going to ask me something?
Well, so what the vibrancy, what I'm interested in just knowing, what do you think the cause was? Was it the end of the Jim Crow era? Was it the limitations of things like loans?
Well, yes, there was a limitation of loans, but the people of the Seabreeze community came together and they put monies together and rebuilt the beach. They weren't broke per se. No, I know you're not insinuating that, but I'm just trying to explain it to you. They were able to put that, building wasn't as expensive as it is now. So they were able to really put their monies together and rebuild. My father had, and Mr. Joe Jr. Farrell, they had, and Mr. Daly, we had the largest facilities on Seabreeze.
I've seen the photo.
Yes. Yes, my dad had a restaurant, he had a dance pavilion, and he had a fishing pier, all connected. You could go from one thing to the other. You could fish, you could dance, and you could eat. And we had some of the best seafood in the United States. Well, I'll tell you a little bit of that too. My father, crime began to come into the area in the 60s, and I think it was in 1967 that my father said that he was getting old and he was tired of sleeping in the building at night trying to catch people that were breaking in, because we experienced a lot of crime. But it did not overpower Seabreeze, because people from all over the world came to Seabreeze. Yes, and I remember as a little girl, as Billy said, that my sister and I, it was a family restaurant. All of us were sisters, aunts, uncles, my cousin Skeets, and I'm sure the older people will remember that. But we had a bond that nobody could break. The Seabreeze people, we're Seabreeze strong.
All right. I have one final question for you, Brenda. Who's got the plan for the rest of it? Oh, all right. I'm following her home. I want to thank you all for coming out and sharing this very special moment with the Freeman family and the residents of Seabreeze, many of whom have traveled from distant places to come see their parents memorialized. I'm so fortunate to have been able to capture that, not knowing that, you know, how long anybody would be with us. But to have that documented is part of the history here in New Hanover County. Thank you all.
I know, it makes me want to.